Carla, the Crazy Cross Stitch Lady. Welcome to my craft room. Thank you so much to all of my current subscribers who have come back and are continuing to enjoy this journey with me of cross stitch. And also I appreciate all of the new subscribers. So if you are new to the channel and you've just happened upon this and you're checking it out, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate that, and I hope that you enjoy what you see and that you are inspired by what you see, and hopefully I can enable you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name of course is Carla, and I am a public school teacher in Central Kentucky. I am currently, well, I've taught middle school the whole time that I've been teaching. I've been teaching for 29 years. And so I'm getting close to retirement age where I do have some plans for doing other things once I retire. I don't want to stop work, but I do, it's time for me to switch gears a little bit. So I got a few years left to go before I can do that, but I am enjoying the time that I have with the kids, and we are getting ready to wrap up the end of the school year. So May is a busy month. But I took some time as we're getting into the last few days of the school year. I thought I would do a tutorial this time. And if you are just joining the channel, you will notice that I have floss tubes and I also have tutorials. And I try to switch back and forth between the floss tubes and the tutorials. I do have playlists. I have one that is strictly for the floss tubes, and I also have one for the tutorials. So if you would like to focus on one or the other, then you will be able to do that. In most of my videos, unless I'm just talking about one thing, I typically have timestamps down at the bottom in the description box. So if you don't have time or don't want to watch the whole thing, then you can choose your part of the journey that you would like to enjoy. And that will be the same here. Today I am doing a tutorial, and this is for beginner stitchers or even people who are just coming back to cross stitching and maybe they've forgotten some stuff and they need a little refresher. If you have been stitching for a really long time, maybe even longer than I have, I've been stitching for over 30 years. Some of you have been stitching for over 40 years, 50 years. And so this is going to be Tuesday afternoon for you. So if you would treat this kind of like maybe just a stitch with me where you have some stitchy background noise. And then if you hear of some things that I've left out, which I know I'm going to leave some things out, but you are thinking, it would be a really good thing if the beginners were aware of this, or if they knew about this, then just pop a comment into the box down there, and that way the beginners can go through the comments if they want, and they can see some ideas from other seasoned stitchers. And there's just no way I can cover everything in a whole video. This one's going to be a long video as it is, but I just can't really cover everything. I was just trying to hit and highlight some basic things. So in this video, you're going to see some different segments, and I will have the timestamps down at the bottom so that if there's a particular thing that you want to see, then you can go straight to it. So in one segment, I talk about different ways that people stitch with like certain tools that they use to stitch with. In another one, I talk about fabric and fabric counts and how do you know what fabrics to use. And then I talk about needles and what kinds of needles to use. And then I talk about some of the terms of cross stitch. And I also have a segment where it's actually, you'll see my screen recorded, and it's going to show you a couple of different sites that you can go to get some free patterns and information. And I'll also take you over to YouTube to show you our FlossTube community. So this definitely is not going to cover everything, but hopefully it will cover enough basics to get you started and to give you a better idea of some of the terms that we use and why we do some of the things that we do. And of course, I always want to encourage you to watch FlossTube. Please ask questions. That's how we learn. And so, especially with me as a teacher, I want you to ask questions. Even if it's not asking me, ask someone else. And I will tell you, if you're just watching FlossTubes, you're going to learn a lot from the stitchers. Even as they're just showing you things, they tell you why they chose what they did or what decision they decided to make. And I assure you right now, most, if not all, of the stitchers who make FlossTubes they love to get comments, and they would love to have your questions. Just say, hey, I'm just getting back into cross stitch, or I'm a beginner stitcher, and when you said blah blah blah, I don't really understand what you meant. Can you explain to me what you meant? And I'm sure they will be more than happy to explain it to you. I know I would definitely love to explain what I meant by something if it wasn't clear to you. So let us more seasoned stitchers be your teachers. I wish that I had had more of this when I was just starting to stitch. But you will just, like with anything else, as you get immersed into the community, you're going to start picking up a lot of stuff. And so I hope that this inspires you and that you really enjoy this craft of cross stitch. I love it, obviously. And so many people are in it, and it's just all the new stuff that's come out in like the last 5 to 10 years has just made it that much more exciting. And so I hope that this becomes a lifelong hobby for you that brings you joy and peace and calm. So for the rest of this time, you are going to see me go to different segments. And like I said, there will be timestamps down at the bottom where you can just choose your journey or watch the whole thing. And I hope that you get some stuff out of it. So without further jabbering on my part, here we go. Okay, so in this segment, I just wanted to talk about some terms that are frequently used in cross stitch, and just so that you are familiar with them. So if you hear a floss tuber mention these terms, or if you hear me say something, or anything like that, if you go to a cross stitch retreat or anything and you hear these terms, you'll have a better idea of what they're actually talking about. So I'm just going to go through the list. They're in no particular order. They're just some terms that I typically hear quite a bit, and I tried to think of beginner cross stitchers and thinking, well, are they going to be confused when they hear this term? They're going, what in the world is that? So let me just go through the list. I will put the word up on the screen so that you can actually see the term, and you can be sure you're clear about what you're hearing. Okay, so the first term is chart. And a chart, when they talk about, oh, this was a very clearly printed chart and I could see all the symbols, they're just talking about a cross stitch pattern. That's all it is. And when they talk about the symbols, those would be like the little pictures or things that you would see in the different boxes that tell you what color you're supposed to stitch with. Okay, the next one is counted. Counted cross stitch is where you have just the fabric and you actually have to count what you might call them squares. They look like squares. We call them threads. It's a thread count. So you have to count how many threads over, how many squares over to see where you need to start stitching. Now you have counted versus stamped cross stitch. Stamped cross stitch is where all the X's are already stamped on a piece of fabric. All you have to do is look at the pattern or the chart, and you have to see which color to use, and then what you do is you stitch over that stamped X so that you don't see the stamped part, you just see the floss that you've used to make the X. I have done both, and I prefer counted to stamped, but I love stamped when it comes to like pillowcases, or if you're doing quilt blocks or something like that, that's really cool. Next term is embroidery. Now, cross stitch is a form of embroidery. Okay, so when you're doing cross stitch, you are doing embroidery. However, to distinguish the different types. There are several different types, but when we say embroidery, what we're talking about is the embroidery where you can stitch ribbon into the design. Usually the design, when they're using their floss, they use long stitches to cover areas, and it looks a little different than the cross stitch does. Okay, the next term is floss toss. Okay, so what a floss toss is you take a piece of fabric, and if you're trying to figure out if the colors that you are using, like the floss colors that you're using, are going to show up well enough or go with your fabric, especially if some colors are very close to your fabric color, then you put down your piece of fabric and you literally take your skeins of floss or your floss drops or whatever, and you put them on the fabric. And that way you can see whether that's going to work or not. And that's a floss toss. Sewing method. Okay, so the sewing method is where your needle always stays on the top of your fabric. So when you've got your needle up, you're putting it into like the next hole that it's supposed to go into, where you're sliding your needle through the fabric and pulling through like that. It never goes under your fabric. I don't use the sewing method. I really don't care to. I've tried to do some, and it's just not for me. But that is the sewing method. A lot of people like it. It's faster. You can stitch faster that way, and a lot of people love using the sewing method. The other method is what I use. It's called stick and stab. So the stick and stab method is literally that. You take your needle, and you're on the top of your fabric, and you stick it into the fabric. It goes all the way down underneath. You take your hand under, you catch it, and you stick it back up into the next hole, pull it up, stick it down, and you're doing this. And a lot of people don't like it because it slows them down, but I like it. I find it very soothing. And if I'm using a hoop or a QSnap, definitely stick and stab is much easier to do. If you've got your fabric really tight, it's going to be really hard to do sewing method. Okay, the next term is FlossTube. FlossTube is the cross stitch community on YouTube, and a lot of cross stitchers do have their own little channel. You don't have to be a designer, you don't have to be a shop owner, although designers and shop owners do have their own FlossTube channels. But it's basically a cross stitch show and tell for the most part. On FlossTube, people will show the works that they have been doing. They will show, sometimes they'll do a stash parade. They'll show the stash, and I'll tell you what stash is shortly. And they'll also show some things that they have bought. So it's basically a show and tell. But people have so much fun with it. People get inspired by it. So it just took off. And it's supposed to help promote cross stitch as a hobby. Okay, the next term is haul. Haul it's basically all the crap you bought. Like since your last video that you did, it's all the stuff that you bought. And even if you don't do FlossTube, if you're in a stitching group or something, you can talk about your haul, which is just all the new stuff that you have purchased. Stash, which is the term I just mentioned. Stash is what you currently own. You may not be stitching on it, but maybe you have a bunch of patterns or you have a bunch of fabric that you haven't used yet, but it's just in your collection, and so that's called stash. Okay, then we have kit versus a pattern. Okay, so a pattern is simply a chart that shows you what you're supposed to stitch, what colors you're supposed to use, that kind of thing. If you have a kit or someone says that they have got something kitted up, what they're saying is that they have the fabric for it, for the pattern, they have the floss, they've got it ready to go, so they've got the floss either like on bobbins or floss drops or whatever, however they store their floss. And they've got it, their scissors, and they've got their needle ready, and they've got everything in their little project bag, and it is all ready for you to start stitching on it. So that's what kitting something up means. Okay, UFO. UFO is unfinished object. And I know un is not its own word, but that's just how we've done it. So unfinished object, usually a UFO is not the same as a whip, which is another term. So whip means work in progress. So if you have a whip, that means that you're currently working on it. You're not finished stitching it, but you're currently working on it. And that's what people tend to like to show on their floss tubes. If you have a UFO, that means that you have worked on the project, but you are not currently working on it. It's just sitting there. Like I have several that I had to take out of my whip rotation because it was getting a little bit too much. And so they're not in timeout. We'll talk about that in a second too. They're just, I've got them set aside, and I will get to them later, but I'm not currently working on them. So I consider them UFOs. Now, some people, they have projects that they have absolutely no intention of finishing. They started it and they're like, I'm done, hate this thing. They put it to the side and they call that a UFO, which you can. And it will probably always stay a UFO. Okay, and so, let's see, I got to whip. Let's see, I thought there was another one. I don't remember. I've got the basic things written down here. I'm not covering everything, but just covering a lot, what you hear a lot of. Okay, the next one is Nashville Needlework Market. Now, I bring this up because during February, you're going to hear a lot about Nashville Needlework Market, and a lot of them just shorten it to market. We call it market. So this is a huge event each year, and it takes place in March. I think I'm right, March. And anyway, that time of year, February, March. And it's not for us, like people like us who are customers. It is for designers and for shops. So the needlework shops will go to this event, and they will make purchases of the new items that designers have come out with. And so market is a time for designers to showcase their new designs, and they all go to this great big hotel, and it's just a huge event, and everybody talks about it because people like me can pre-order these new designs, and we can get them before the shops even, put them on their sites or put them like into their shops for people to buy. You can go ahead and pre-order, and there's just a lot of excitement. And basically, I consider it the start of a new cross stitch year, if you will. That's just me saying that. That's not anyone else, but I think, this is when all the designers showcase and display all of their new projects, new designs for the year. And then it'll happen again next February and March. And you'll find several different shops and designers will advertise that you can pre-order, here's so-and-so's new design, you can pre-order it, and it's just a lot of excitement, a lot of fun. Okay, let's see, I did whip. Full coverage. Okay, so when someone talks about doing a full coverage piece, that means that when they are stitching, it's like every piece of the fabric is covered. It's not, that you have like one big object where you've got a lot of stitching you have to do and it covers most of it. In order for it to be full coverage, the entire thing has to be covered in stitches. You cannot see fabric at all if it's a full coverage. Now, if it's not a full coverage, that means that the fabric becomes a part of the background because you can see the fabric because you're just stitching like a little house here, or the kitty cat, or a bunny rabbit, or whatever. You can see the fabric. So it's what makes it full coverage is if the entire thing is covered, and that's why it's called full coverage. A lot of people don't like to do full coverage because it's a lot of work. because it's a lot of stitching. So I do have a video on tips on doing a full coverage project. Okay, the next one is primitive stitch, or we call it prim stitch. So you can find samplers. There are reproduction samplers where designers have taken an original sampler that a young girl may have stitched back in the 1800s, even the 1700s, and they will they'll chart that design. They might try to use the original colors if they know what those colors are. They may do some tweaks to it, but typically they try to stay true to that sampler and chart it so that the rest of us can actually stitch that sampler if we want to, because the young girls didn't go by charts. They were doing those samplers to practice their stitches. And so these designers make these charts, and therefore it's called a reproduction sampler. And that would be a part of primitive stitch. Primitive stitch, or prim stitch, is when you're stitching a pattern that would have been stitched back in, let's say, the 1800s. There are designers who will create new designs. They're new designs, but they are done in the mode of what a primitive stitch would look like, what a primitive pattern would look like. Then you have modern stitch. So modern stitch would be things that you see stitched a lot today, like barns, and I'll show you like this rose manor that I just bought. So this is a modern stitch. You know, this does not look like primitive stitch. Primitive stitch is where you see some very crude, it's kind of crude looking people and basic animals, and you see a lot of flower prints and things like that. And I'm trying to think if I've got some primitive stitch. I don't stitch a lot of primitive stitch. But there are some people that's all they want to stitch, which is cool. I respect because that's where cross stitch came from. So I respect that. But I tend to like more like, you know, the Moo Farm. So this is, excuse me, Manny D. Donna, which is the designer there. So I tend to like stuff like that a little bit more. So anyway, so that's the difference between, if you hear someone saying prim stitch or modern stitch, you get the idea. All right, next one is confetti. All right. Confetti, most people absolutely hate confetti. So, you know, when you see confetti at parties, it's like, you know, people throwing confetti, you see all these different little colors and these little pieces, and you know, they're just all over the place. Well, confetti and cross stitching is where you have a part of a piece, or it could be a good portion of the piece, where you have one color here and one color here, and it's just like one or two stitches of a color, and it's sprinkled all over, where it's constantly starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And it's really hard to, what we call, another term here, carrying your thread, which means that when you get to the end of like 2 stitches and then your next stitch is down here, then you're going behind and you're just trailing your thread. You're just going over and starting this next stitch, and you've got all this thread that's been trailed right here. That's called carrying your thread. You can get away with it in certain circumstances if you can't see it through the front, and if it's a very short distance, you're good. But if it's a very light sheer linen, let's say, and you've got thread that's trailed like that, probably not going to look too great. So that means you have to stop your thread, and then you have to go down here, and then you have to start up again and do like 2 stitches, and then you stop it again. And it can be really frustrating and tiring, but that's why it's called confetti. Michael Jackson's shirt on my full coverage, it's supposed to represent, he had like sequins and stuff on it, and it's supposed to represent the sparkliness of it. It looks good, but boy, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get that done. I can tell you that. So we don't like confetti stitches around here. Okay. Now this next one, you know, I don't curse on my channel. Okay. But I'm going to make an exception here. It's too funny. So like my Michael Jackson piece, which ended up being about a 16 by 20, and it's full coverage, mind you. We have this term called BAP. So I'll put that on the screen, and that stands for big ass project. So I don't hear that term as much now, but that's what that sucker is. I was looking over because he is on the wall right now, and he is definitely a BAP. I just had to do it. Okay, so the next term is frogging, or having to frog something, or the frog visited me today. Well, we're not talking about the little green critter, although we have made jokes about it by stitching the little green critter or by having a little stuffed animal green critter. When you frog, that means that you're having to pull the floss out because you've made a mistake. And we say it because you have to rip it, and it sounds like ribbit, which is what we say is a frog's sound. And that's where we get frogging from. So we just say, oh man, I had to frog that whole section. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, everybody knows what they're talking about. So that's what frogging is. Okay, then we have an FO. An FO is a finished object, and that means that you have completely stitched something. So you have completely finished stitching, but you haven't done anything else with it. It's just completely stitched. Then we have the FFO, which is really cool because FFO is fully finished object, which means, or some people will say fully framed object or finally framed object. And FFO is where you have taken your finished stitching and you have turned it into something. It could be a flat fold. You might have framed it. You could have it prepped where you've put it on the sticky mounting board and put lace around it and a little hanger so you can put it on the wall. Maybe you made a pillow. So it's something where you have turned it into a useful object that you are, it's completely done at that point. Then we have railroading, and it's amazing how many experienced stitchers are not familiar with the term railroading. We don't use it a lot. It has been used more lately, but railroading is simply where you take your needle and you've got your two threads and you just stick your needle between the two threads and then put it down into the hole, and that's supposed to make your threads lie flat. Okay, not sometimes they get kind of twisted, right? We want the threads to lie flat because that just makes it look a lot better and you get better coverage. Now, some people don't care if it twists a little bit, whatever. They're just stitching for the fun of it. That's fine. I like my stitches railroaded as much as possible. Now, sometimes they end up not being, but for the most part, I like to railroad mine. But that's what railroading is. And that's why they call it a railroad, because with railroads, you've got your railroad ties that, you've got the metal bar and then the ties go this way, but you've got your metal bars. And so when you get your threads lined up, they're kind of like railroad tracks. Okay, then we have SAL. SAL is stitch along. And a stitch along is where someone decides they're going to start stitching on a particular project, and they invite other people to stitch along, and usually they will take pieces of it. They say, okay, we're going to do this section here for this month. The next month, we're going to do this section. And that way everybody is stitching the same project at pretty much at the same time together. That's the idea. Now, some people will join SALs, and they like the pattern and they just join it and then they stitch at their own pace. You don't have to keep up, but it's just one of those things people love to join because that, you're stitching the same project with a bunch of other people and it's just a lot of fun. Okay, then we have needle minder. A needle minder is simply a fancy magnet. it mines your needle. And so you put your needle on there when you're not using it, or if you're having to get ready to change flosses, and it keeps your needle from getting dropped on the sofa, getting lost, getting on the floor, you know, that kind of thing. People collect needle minders. If you see back here, see this little white magnet board, I've got several needle minders. I don't have it full yet, but I like to collect needle minders because they're very pretty magnets, and I like pretty magnets because I like pretty things. They can be a little more expensive. They don't have to be, but that's what a needle minder is. Okay, then we have Ort, which is, some people call it old ratty thread or old raggedy thread. That's simply your scrap threads from where you have cut, like if you finish with a stitch and you cut off your thread and you don't have enough left to actually start a new stitch, so you just put that into some kind of a container, or you can throw it away, and it's just called an Ort. Some people collect them and then they put them into I've lost it. Ornaments. You have those little plastic ornaments that you can fill. They're clear, and then you can fill it in with stuff. Sometimes they'll do that. And then the last term that I have is LNS, and that is local needlework shop. Some people have needlework shops close to them. Some don't, and they have to always order online. But that's when you hear people talk about, well, I'm not close to an LNS, they're talking about having a local needlework shop that they can go to and shop at. So I hope that having this short list of like very commonly used terms has been helpful to you, and that now when someone uses these terms, you are going to understand what they're talking about, and then you can join in the conversation and you can start using these terms as well. All right, so this segment, we're going to talk about ways that you can stitch and just some terms so that you are familiar with how people do things. So one of the terms is stitching in hand. When you stitch in hand, you literally are, some people may roll up the fabric a little bit, but they're holding on to their project. And they just take their fingers and kind of put some tension on it, and then they just start stitching. Some people use the sewing method where they keep the needle above the fabric and don't go like underneath. And there are tutorials out there that will show you how to stitch doing the sewing method. You can also do stick and stab, but this is how they do it. They, are literally holding the fabric in their hand, nothing else. So that's called stitching in hand. Some people just want their hands on the fabric. Some people feel like they can stitch faster with doing it in hand. I typically don't do it in hand. I have done it in hand. And if there are, like if I'm on the edge of something and I'm having to, it's kind of a tight area, then I may do that part in hand, but I'm not going to do the whole thing in hand because I just don't. It's me. I am more of a hoop girl. And I like to use plastic hoops. Some people like the wooden ones, which used to just have wooden ones all the time. But I like these plastic ones with the rounded edges. It just feels good in my hand. And so you take this little screw, you just unscrew it, not all the way, but unscrew it where it's loose. And then you've got these two parts to it. This is the inner hoop, and you can see the little ridge there that grips the fabric. So you put that underneath. I'm just going to put it right here. This one has the ridge inside there, and you just put it over, and I'll tighten the hoop sometimes, just make it a little bit tighter, and then I will put it over my fabric, and then I just start screwing it back this way, making it tighter. And sometimes I will pull, I'll just take the fabric, I'll just kind of pull on it a little bit to make it tighter. I usually don't use a hoop that's this large. I think this is like I think it's a 10-inch hoop. I usually stick to like a 6 or 7-inch hoop. I feel like I can control it a little bit better. Now, you may be saying, well, you've got some of that over your stitches. Does that hurt your stitches? No, typically no. If you're gentle about it, it's not going to hurt your stitches. but you don't want to leave this in. Once I finish with stitching, it comes off of the fabric because you're holding the fabric taut and it needs to, what we call, rest. So that's the hoop, and it's not super tight, but it's tight enough where I can get the job done. And then to take it off, I just go, you know, unscrew it in this direction, just get it really loose, and then I just push a little bit and I get the two pieces out. And then what I do is I put it back together, and then I like to do that and just screw it back together where it won't come loose. Okay, the other thing that you can use is a QSnap. So we have these clamps that you can see these ridges on the inside of them, and they help to grip the fabric and grip the QSnap. And then typically you're going to have these four, it's like a light version of PVC pipe. And so, you know, you just have that. And what you do is you put these pieces together. So what I'm going to do is just slide that in, take the next piece, and and you're making a square, so you're going to slide it in that way. And then I'm going to take this last piece and slide it in, and then hook these two, and now I have a square. So what you do is you take your square and you put it under your fabric, and then what I do is I clamp the top first. I kind of go a little sideways, just a little bit. And then I come down here, push that on. So I do it side by side. And then I come here and I'm gonna push that on and then clamp number 4. Now, what you do to tighten it is you take your two sides and you roll out away from you. And then come to this side and you roll out. Now, that is drum tight. I love this. That's one thing I love about QSnaps. There's a lot of tension. If you like a lot of tension, QSnap is for you. The one complaint I have about QSnaps that a lot of other people complain about is that they can get heavy. If you're holding them and you're stitching, it can get heavy and a little cumbersome. So that's where stands come in. They do have stands where you can clamp the stand onto the QSnap and you can clamp the stand onto a table, and that way it's sitting by itself and your hands are free and you can use both hands without straining them. You can also, they have these bigger stands or these frames that you can, like if you have bigger projects, you can put them on these frames and use those. And so some people will use those as well. I will insert a picture of someone using a frame and stand so you can at least get an idea of what those look like, since I don't have any. I have thought about getting a stand for my QSnap so that I can actually use them a little more often. So those are just some of the basic terms that you'll hear in ways that people prepare their project in order to stitch on them. In this segment, we're going to talk about needles. So let's talk about needles. Okay, so first of all, what you are going to use for your stitching is a tapestry needle. Tapestry needles have it's a blunt end on it. So the point is going to be blunt, and then the eye is supposed to be a little bit larger. So I'm going to show you some of the types that I have used in the different sizes. So one of the types that I've used, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so you can see better. This is a Bowen needle. Bowen is made in France. You can see here, okay? And so there we have Bowen, France. This is a size 22. So some of the different sizes you're going to have, the ones that are used the most are 22, 24, 26, and 28. Now, 22, I'm going to get one of these out, and we're just going to line these up because I've got more of the Bowens than I do others because I used to use Bowen like all the time. Okay, so here's a 22. I'm going to set it right there. Okay. All right. This is a size 24, you can see here, They come in this kind of packaging. Okay, so slide that out. Here's a 24. Try to line that up. Okay. And then this one is a 26. I do have 28s. I have very few of them, and I think one's like MIA right now. But you'll get the idea even with just these 3. Okay, so there's a 20, let's see, 26, okay. And then the 28, as you can guess, is going to be even smaller. Okay, so let me zoom in on this so you can get a much better look. Let me go in as close as I can. Okay, so here we see we have the 22. It is much longer, okay, and the shaft is bigger, it's thicker. Now, yeah, they like to play with each other sometimes, so scoot that over a little bit. So this one's longer, it's bigger, the eye of the needle's longer, and I'm gonna hold this up close where you can see the end of it. See, it's blunt. Now, it's still sharp, it can still punch you, you know, you can get poked by it, but not like a sewing needle. So that's why this is a tapestry needle. And then here's the eye of it, okay? So that's a 22. And then the 24 is just a little bit smaller. It's a little shorter, a little thinner. And then the 26 is even shorter and thinner and smaller. So the 28 is going to come in a little bit more and be even smaller. Okay, so that's Bowen. So I'm going to come back out just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to scoot these over here. I'm going to put them back in their packaging later. Now, one of the other types I use is John James. John James comes in this type of package. Bowen and John James both have very good reviews. They're good needles. And we'll talk about, you know, what makes a good needle. So this is a size 24. And this one, I don't think I have opened. The pricing is pretty good. Like if you go to 123 Stitch, the Bowens typically for like a package of, you get, let's see, you get 6, I believe. Yeah, you get 6 of these, and then I paid like $2 and something for that. This one's like $3 and something, and then you get 6 of them as well. So pretty reasonably priced. Thought I had these open. So I wanted to show you these too. There we go. Okay, get that one out. Okay, so that's a 24. Okay, I'm going to set this here. And then the 26. So here is the 26. And get that one pulled out. And that's all I have. I don't have any John James 28s. I was a little stubborn there. Okay, so here you can see that John James, if you look at these two, this is Bowen, this is John James. John James is a little bit shorter, but when you're comparing just the John James, again, this 24 is a little bit longer and a little bit thicker than the 26. And then the last one I'm going to show you, these are Peacemakers. And this has the size right there, 26. That's all I've got. I had never tried Peacemakers, and I wanted to try them because I've heard good things about them. Now, I do want to tell you that there has been a controversy with the Peacemakers. It's a group of women, older women, and they are apparently a religious group, and they have now been accused of foul labor practices, and people are saying, oh, they're nothing but a cult. Well, I've been hearing a lot of mixed messages from both the media and then from people commenting and people claiming that they know these ladies personally. So right now, as far as I'm concerned, the verdict is out. I have not made up my mind one way or the other. So right now, I really don't have a problem with purchasing Peacemakers, and they've they had to close their shop. As of right now, their shop is closed anyway. So I don't know if there will be more needles made or not, but I have been very pleased with these. And like I said, we'll talk about what makes for a good needle. So there is the Peacemaker, and let's see, let me slide it down here. This is compared to the other 26 needles. They're all about the same size and the same width. Okay, now what makes the difference between like Bowen and John James and then the Peacemakers? Well, typically the better needles will glide through the holes in your fabric. They won't be catching. They won't shred your floss when you put them through the eye of the needle. Some people like larger eyes in the needles so that they can thread them easier, and they base it on that. I base it on how long does the needle last before the coating starts to rub off. And you can tell when the coating starts to rub off when you're pulling your needle through the fabric and it's starting to catch. It's starting to pull. It feels like you're having to drag it through the hole, and it's kind of scraping and that kind of thing. So that's how I can tell when time's up, it's time to throw that away. So I hang on to my needles as long as I possibly can. And so as long as the coating is on there and it's gliding through the needle, it's great. John James, is out of these three, is probably my least favorite, and it's a good needle, but I feel like the Bowen glides through a little bit better. And the best one to me right now actually is the Peacemaker. I even like them a little bit better than I do the Bowen needles. The one needle brand I do not like at all, and I don't mind saying this because I love the floss. DMC has, I mean, I have almost every color of floss of DMC you can imagine. So I pretty much got the whole collection. I love DMC floss. They do an excellent job of making it. I don't think they do a good job at all of making needles. The needles, they pull through the fabric. Now remember, this is my opinion, okay? They pull through the fabric, they drag. The coating does not, it's not good to begin with, and it doesn't stay on long. So I just don't even bother purchasing DMC needles. And I used to use them all the time because that's all I knew. And that's all that was available to me, because cross-stitching fell out of popularity for quite a while. And so you'd have some people stitching, but it wasn't to the extent that we have it now. So thank goodness it has blossomed again. So these are the needles. Now, you also may be thinking, okay, so, well, how do I know what size to use? You're telling me there's 22, 24, 26, 28. How in the world do I know what to use? So let me put this to the side for just a minute. And I'm gonna take this piece of paper here. And let's see, let me back out a little bit. And I'm gonna show you the little trick that I learned from this. Okay, so there are different counts of fabric, and we're actually there's a segment I'm gonna do talking about fabric. So we have 14 count Aida, and then we have 16 count, 18 count, and there's even a 20 count. And then when you get into 22 count, that's more of a hardanger, which is not usually something people will just stitch on. They usually will do other things with that. So we're just going to stick with these more common counts. Now, this, when we're talking about like even weave or linen, that's when the count doubles, because you typically stitch over 2, and I'm going to talk about that in the other segment. So 14 count Aida would be like a 28 count linen or even weave. Running out of room there. 16 count would be like a 32 count in linen or even weave. 18 count is like a 36 count, and a 20 is like a 40. Now, you can get on up into like, there's even a 56 count and on up. 40 usually is what as high as most people will stitch. I'll just say most, I won't say all. So how do we know which needle to use for this? Okay, so let's start over here. So this is what I go by. And you also have lower counts, like there's a 10 count. I shouldn't put that hyphen there. That hyphen, you don't need a hyphen in there. 10 count. You also have like a 7 count. Typically 7 and 10 count, we use those to teach children how to cross stitch. They are also used when you want bigger, like chunkier looking pieces, or you just want to take a smaller pattern and really make it a lot larger. You might use a 10 count. Some of them you just want a chunkier look to it, and so you use a larger count and you use more strands of floss. So for things like the 7 and 10 count, you're going to use the size 22 needle. Okay, and you know, that's typically what people would use on that. For 14 count, now this is the little trick I want to teach you. Okay, 14, you've got this 4 at the end, right? So with a 14 count Aida, you typically would use a size 24 needle. Okay, now remember 14 count Aida is like a 28 count linen. So what are you going to use on 28 count linen? Typically you would use the size 24 needle. Okay. All right. For the 16 count, 16, it ends with the 6. So you typically would use a size 26 needle. Same thing for 32 count. You would use a size 26 needle. For the 18 count, and also for the 20, you're going to use a size 28 needle. Now this is typical. Same for 36, you would use a size 28 needle. Now for 20 and 40 count, 28 is as small as you're going to get. So you're going to use 28 from here on out. This is in general. Now what you're looking for is when you're using the needle, you want it to be able to go through the hole and not fall through the hole. If it's falling through the hole, it's too small. You want it to be able to go through the hole and it kind of stays there, and then you can pull it on through, but you want to be able to easily pull it on through. If it's getting stuck in the hole and it's making the hole too large and you're having to really pull it through, then your needle is too large for what you have. Now, here's me. I used to use a 24 all the time, no matter what, because I loved 24. I'm kind of now stuck on the 26. Now, I will say I have a 36 count project that I'm working on, and I am using the 28 for it because it's linen, and I just, in my mind, linen's a little more fragile than even weave. But typically, I like to use 26, even if I'm doing like a 14 or 28. I love the 26, and I feel like it's not just falling through the hole, and so I feel like I'm okay there. But that's just me. Some people just love using the 28, and they use the 28 a lot. But typically, if you're just not sure what size to use, I would go by this. So start with what the different counts of Aida and just look at your ending number. And I've never, I don't really see cross stitchers teaching other people this. And so I wanted to teach you this because this is pretty much what you go by. So it ends in 4, 24, 6, 26, 8, 28. And then just transfer that to your linens. Okay, so that's typically how I do that to find the size needle that I need for my fabric. Okay, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell with what the needles look like and just some of the brands I use. Like I use Bowen, John James, and I've now started using Peacemakers. But again, like with anything else, you want to experiment. If you go, especially to 1-2-3 Stitch, go there online and you can more cheaply afford to experiment and just try things. It's like, oh, I've never used that needle before. Well, buy it and find out. You may find another needle that you like better than any of these three. I mean, I didn't think I would find anything to top Bowen. I loved Bowen. Well, here come Peacemakers, and I looked at it, I thought, it's got good reviews. I'm going to give that a try. And I happen to really like them. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't tried. So you can use this as a guide. I hope this is helpful in helping you to determine what size needle you're going to need. I would suggest that you experiment. Maybe start with a size 26 if you're trying to figure out what brand you like. And then once you find a brand you like, I would suggest, and I'm trying to do this. I haven't been good about this, I'll admit it, but getting at least one or two packages of each of these size needles, probably even a 22. Now, I don't have very many 22s. I have this one set of Bowen 22s, and that's about it, because I just don't use 22s very often. But I like to have them just in case. So maybe 122, and then make sure you have some of each size, and that way you're good to go, at least for a while, no matter what kind of fabric you have. And so there you go with needles. Okay, in this segment, we are going to talk about fabric. What kind of fabric should you use? All right, so let's first of all start with the difference between Aida, even weave, and linen. Okay, so this is Aida. Now I'm going to zoom in. As you can see, we have large blocks here. And with Aida, you are stitching over one of these. So we never say over one with Aida because we assume that people are going to be stitching over one. Sometimes they use one strand, sometimes they use two strands. This is a 14 count Aida. Now, it told me that, but for me to figure it out, let's say somebody just gave this to me and I don't know what the count is. I can easily figure it out. So if I line my ruler up, if I take this black line here and line it up with one of the blocks, in 1 inch, I should be able to count 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So there are 14 blocks. We call them threads. You might call them, 14 spaces or 14 squares. But in the cross-stitch industry, we call them threads. So 14 threads in this 1 inch. And that's why it's called 14 count. And this is Aida because the blocks are much bigger. So when we say something like 1/1, the first number 1, and it might be easier if I write this out. So let me scoot this to the side. Okay, so if I say, let me back this up a little bit, 1/1. Okay, so 1/1, the first number here is 1 strand over, and this one is 1 thread, or as you might know it, like a square. Okay, so that's 1/1 strand of floss over 1 square. Then we might have what's called 1/2, and that means that it's 1 strand of floss over 2 threads or 2 squares. That would be with your even weaves and linens, and I'll show you that in a minute. Then we've got 2/1, so that would be 2 strands over 1 thread. And then we have 2/2, which is 2 strands over 2 threads, or as you might think of it, squares. Okay, so that's what this means when someone says, oh yeah, I stitched it 2/1. Well, now you know it's 2 strands over 1 square. All right, And like I said, all of this is typically used with even weaving linen. We don't do this with Aida. Sometimes we just use one strand in Aida, but we don't say, you know, 1/1 with Aida, because we know with Aida it is going to be over 1. It's always going to be 1 square. We just say, well, I had an 18 count and I used 1 strand for this, which typically you would with 18 count unless you want like thick coverage. So let's go back to this. Okay, so here's our 14 count Aida. So you can see what the blocks look like on here. Okay. Now, I don't have, let's see. Yeah, I have my 16. Okay, so this is, I have an 18 count somewhere, but I'm going to show you 16 just so you can compare and see the difference. Okay, this is a 16 count, 14, 16. So you see the difference in size, because now with this one, it's 16 squares or 16 threads in 1 inch of fabric. So the squares or the threads have to be quite a bit smaller to fit in. So you see the difference here. So 18, an 18 count is going to be even smaller. Okay, now let me take this away again for a minute. Okay, now this is a 14 count Aida. This is a 28 count Lugana. So look at the difference here. This is, you know, the squares are much smaller. It has a smoother look to it. This one looks very, I don't want to use the word squarey, but it looks, I mean, you can really see the squares. You can really see the holes in this. This one has a much smoother look to it. So it's going to give projects a different look. This one, if I put the ruler up here and I find a little square, within this 1 inch, there are going to be 28 squares. That's pretty tiny. So this one is where if you stitch over 1, like say 1/1, you would have 1 strand of floss, and you are literally, scoot that in, you are going over, let me pull a needle out here so I can show you. You are going over just 1 square. That's it. So that means that your project's going to be really tiny, probably. Typically on an even weave like this, people go over 2. So they're going over 1, 2. So they're going over 2 of these blocks instead of just 1. Sometimes they might use 1 thread. Sometimes they might use 2. When you go over 2 and it's a 28, you basically then, the size of the X on here is going to be the same size as just 1 of these squares, because the count is double the count. This is half the count. So 1 square here on 14 count is the same size as 2 squares on 28 count. Okay, so there's 28. Now, I have, let's see, is this a 32? There's my 32. Now let me move the Aida out of the way. Or this is 28. This, I love this fabric, it's so pretty. This is a 32. Look, now this is also an even weave, but look at the difference. Look at the difference of the look. This looks tighter, smoother than this. You can see the squares a little bit easily. Now, if you zoom out and we're just looking at them like this, you can tell a little bit of a difference, but it's not huge, okay? But zooming in, then we can really see the difference between the two, okay? So let me zoom back out. And this one, because it's 32 count, if you're stitching over 2 of these blocks or threads, this is the same as the size of the 16 count Aida. So let's see, where's my, I don't know what I did with my 16. There's my 14. Did it disappear? There's my 16. There we go. Okay, so let me move this one. Okay, so here, just so you can see, this is 16 count Aida, and this is 32 count Lugana. So if you're stitching over 2 of these threads, it's going to be like stitching over 1 of these. Okay, so a lot of times with 32, and especially with 36 and on, people will just use 1 strand of floss. Gives plenty of coverage, and I'll show you here in just a second. So let me move these out. I'm going to zoom back out. Put these to the side. Now this, I'm going to show you some linen. This is 36 count linen. Let me really zoom in. Do you see some different things here? These things right here. And we see this. Let's see, let me see if I can find. This one's this is a really good fabric, but I thought I had seen some more. Yeah, so we see things like this thickness here. You see that thickness, and there's some here. Those are called slubs. And depending on what kind of piece you have, the slubs could get pretty thick. This one is not a really bad piece. This is a very good piece of linen. I got this one from Lap and Loops. She and her husband do a fantastic job of dyeing. So I'm using this. This is a 36 count. So if you take the ruler and you line it up with one square within this 1 inch, we have 36 squares. That's pretty small, isn't it? So this 36 is going, if we stitch over 2, it's going to make X's that are the size of what you would find in an 18 count Aida. Now, this pattern that I'm using is, it says to stitch 1/2. So what that means is, and I'll show you, here's what I've been working on, okay? So this is, let me zoom out here. I'm working on a sampler. And this is one of my whips, which means it's a work in progress. So I've been working on this. I'm really liking the way it looks. But I'm going to zoom in as close as I can get because I want you to see how it's over 2 of these little squares. All of these X's are over 2, but it's just using 1 strand of floss. I'm not using 2 like what's called for in a lot of patterns. But it gives really good coverage here, doesn't it? I mean, it looks just fine with 1 strand, but that's because the blocks are so small, okay? So each of these little X's is the size of what you would see on an 18 count Aida. But this is a 36 count linen. And we know it's a linen because it has a slightly different look than even weave. It's not as even. The stitches or the threads, you know, like I said, you see all these little thicknesses. Those are slubs. It's just the nature of linen. And it just, it has a different feel to it. To me, it always feels a little flimsier maybe than even weave. Even weave has a nice, like thick, sturdy feel to it to me. And so that's what this is. So I just wanted to show you what some stitching on that would look like. Now, here's the question. So now you've seen Aida and you've seen even weave and linen. And so I'm sure you're probably asking, okay, so when do I know to use that? When do I use Aida? When do I use the even weave? You know, there are all these options. What do I do? Well, here's how people make their choices. sometimes people, as they get a little older, they just can't see well. And so if they can't see well, I'm going to move this over to the side here. If they have a hard time seeing, this is probably what they're going to go to, Aida. Aida, this is much easier to see. It's easier to stitch with. I typically can stitch faster on Aida because I'm not having to mentally count over 2, which you have to, at first, you're very conscious about counting over 2. It starts to become more natural to you as you stitch on it more, but Aida is definitely a lot easier to stitch on. Now, you know, and some people just want this, they want a cross-stitchy look. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's just, you know it's cross-stitch, you know it's handmade, and it's just has this certain look to it. Well, like when I do my full coverage, Aida is a cheaper fabric. When you do full coverage, you can't see the fabric at all. So I don't see the point in spending more money on an even weave or linen when you're not going to see it. And you're going to get the same result. So I just don't do that. I stitch on Aida with that. And I do have some projects where I stitch on Aida because I like Aida. It's fun to stitch on. But some people, like if they're doing samplers or if they're doing some prim stitch, they want to have a kind of a prim look. And so they're going to stitch on a linen because it has more of that old-timey look to it. Some people just like stitching on linen, so they'll stitch on linen. I am a big fan of even weave. I love even weave, and it does, you know, they come in so many beautiful colors now. I mean, isn't this gorgeous? I got this one. This is Atomic Ranch Fabrics. It's called Euphoria. This is a bigger piece of Lugana. This is a 32 count. So typically if you go to a needlework shop, you're going to see the tags on here like this, and they've stapled it into the selvage, so it's not, excuse me, it's not damaging the fabric. And so you can see what size it is and then what your fabric count is. I really liked this color, so let me turn it over. So I can already think of some projects that I would like to put this on, and I just like the smooth look of even weave. You know, it doesn't have the chunky blocks like Aida. It's very smooth. So some of the projects I have where I just want that kind of smooth, polished look, I might do an even weave. So those are some different reasons why you might choose Aida over even weave, or you might choose a linen instead. You know, like this is, I got this one from 123 Stitch, and this is, you can just easily peel that off. So this is a 28 count lamb's wool Jobelin. Jobelin and Lugana are both even weaves. They're made out of slightly different materials. This one is Jobelin. I love Jobelin because it's nice and thick. Lugana is not as thick. Lugana has more of a slick, smooth feel to it. Jobelin's a little chunkier. It's got some heft to it, which is one of the reasons I like it. I like them both though, so I'll take either one. That's, you know, that would be why people would choose different ones. Now, I'm going to show you, let's see, let me find, I also bought, this is Vintage Country Mocha. I bought this from 123 Stitch. This is a 25 count. So this is, you're like, okay, you haven't told us about 25 count. Okay, so 25 count. Now, this is an even weave, so if we want to translate it to what count of Aida it would be, we have to split it in half, right? So half of 25 is 12 and a half. So this would be like a 12 and a half count Aida, which is, the squares are even bigger than the 14 count. So I'm like, well, why would you use 25 count? Well, 25 count is, it's easier to stitch on. It's a little easier to see the holes, but you get that look of even weave, that smooth look of even weave. So I bought this because I have a particular project that I want to work on, and it's like, I've got to be able to see these holes a little better. And I love the color. I've never used Vintage Country Mocha. but I love this color. I love the modeling. And so I'm good to go. When I started this 36 count, I was nervous because this was part of the project for our ranch retreat last fall. And I thought, ooh, I don't know if this is going to work or not, because my eyes, I had to stop using 36 count. I tried 136 and it about killed me. So I said, okay, we're going to try this, but we're going to have to do something different. So I bought a Halo Go light, and I will put a link to it in the description below so that you can just take a look at it. They are not cheap. I will tell you that right now. They are expensive, but it is so well worth it. It's well made. It's a good company, and it has a different light settings on it, and it has a magnifying glass. So I've been using that for this, and I can see the holes with no problem whatsoever. And I am so stinking happy that I was like, I am stitching on 36. And so now someone in the FlossTube community has encouraged me to try a 40 count Verdal. I think is it Verdal? I think that's how it's pronounced. I've never used it, as you can tell. So I may, once I get this finished, I may be brave enough to try 40 count, which is even smaller than this. This is 36 squares in an inch. The 40 count's going to be 40 squares in an inch. So I'm a little nervous about that, but you know what? I won't know until I try, right? So I'm going to try it. And you know what? If I don't like it, if it makes my eyes uncomfortable, guess what? I just won't use it. So don't be afraid to try things and try new colors. And if you don't like something, you can always donate it to somebody else. You know, you're part of a cross stitch community now. You can always, and a lot of us, the floss tubers, we give email addresses out in our description boxes. If you don't know anyone close to you, or if you're not part of a cross stitching group, then you can always email one of us, maybe a favorite floss tuber that you have, and just say, hey, I have this, I don't want to use this stuff anymore. It's just not working for me. Would you like to have it? And you know, that way you can pass it along to some other people who may actually want to use it. And that way we don't have things that go to waste, and we're helping each other out. So I think this is all I've got for the fabric portion of this. Okay, I am holding the camera in my hand because I almost forgot to do this segment. So it may be a little shakier, but shouldn't be too horrible. So let me show you some different types of floss. So this segment, this is going to be a much shorter one. I'm just showing you the differences in some of the floss that we have available, because we have a lot of different flosses available. So of course, one of the common ones is DMC. DMC is called Color Fast, and I will show you this one right here. This is DMC 3845. And the lighting is just really not, it's not doing justice to the color here. And I was trying to get it to get a little lighter, but yeah, it's not, woo, okay. Maybe that's a little too much. Okay, let's go back down a little bit. Okay, so that's, there we go. That's more like it. This is a beautiful color blue thread. This Color Fast means that it is not going to bleed. And I can tell you from all of my years of experience with DMC, I have never, I mean, not even one time had an issue with DMC bleeding. Not ever. So it truly is Color Fast. But this, it is an even color that is all the way through the thread. This is, it's just, let's see, I'm trying to, what am I thinking the word for it? It's going to be even. Every time that you get DMC 3845, it's going to be this color. So you can count on it to be this color all the time. Now, this is 100% cotton. Most of your flosses are going to be 100% cotton, with the exception of a few. And I'll show you that here in a minute. DMC has another that's called variegated. Variegated is also color fast, but let me see if I can, let me find a color here. This green one's really cool. This is DMC 4050, and this is part of their variegated floss. Now this is color fast, but it has a very even changing of colors, and it's pretty much a lot of the DMC variegated flosses are an in-your-face kind of, we're changing colors now. So it goes from a darker green to, it's such a light green, it almost looks yellow. And so you look very closely, you can see the changes in the color. But like I said, every time that you get a DMC 4050, it's going to look like this. You can just take it to the bank and guarantee it. But if you want changes in colors, like if you're doing a what's called a monochromatic piece, so if this is the only floss you're using on a particular piece, you're going to have some really pretty changes of color. And this is one, I think I have another video where I talk about how to stitch with this. So that's a whole different ball game from just showing you what these flosses are. So you may want to go check out that video. It's in my tutorial playlist. So I would just, if you're interested in learning some of those little tricks and tips, then I would go check that out. Okay, and I can link the playlist below. That's probably a good idea. Okay, so there's that. And then we have, let me look through let me find my floss here. I have color and cotton. I've got a few colors of theirs. This is, let me put it out there. This is called Aphrodite. Now this is also cotton. This is 8 yards instead of, like, sometimes you'll just get 5 yards, but this is 8. And this is over-dyed floss. It's called over-dyed, and it's a little different from the variegated because over-dyed is not usually an in-your-face kind of thing. It's very subtle. But if you look throughout the strands, you will start seeing some differences in the shade. The shade will start changing a little bit. It's subtle. But when you start stitching with it on a project, it becomes a lot more obvious, and it's beautiful depending on how you stitch with it, whether you do like loop method or if you decide to, you know, catch your tail on the ends. And I have tutorials about that. It's going to have a different look, but it's a really pretty over-dyed. And when I heard on one FlossTube where they called it bougie floss, about dyed when I heard that, because of course bougie is, and a lot of people use the word bougie, they don't even know what it means. They think they know what it means, but bougie is a slang shortened term for bourgeoisie, which back in what I think it's the late, I guess, would have been maybe 15th, 16th century, maybe even 17th century. That term was used for the middle class, and it was middle class people trying to be upper class people, and that's what that is. So they call it bougie floss because it's a fancier floss than just your regular cotton. So I thought that was hilarious when they used that. I was like, bougie floss, okay. All right, now this last one I want to show you is also, this is Classic Colorworks. And this beautiful stuff, oh my gosh, look at that purple. Oh, it's so pretty. I have not stitched with this yet. This is called Belle Soie. This is Laura Lilac. That's the color. And it is Belle Soie, which means that it is silk. This is 12-stranded, 100% spun silk. I didn't realize that I actually had 2 of these. I thought I only had 1, but I have 2. And so there's a project that I would love to work on where I want it to be completely silk. This stuff is expensive. We're talking, you know, this one floss drop worth is about $5 or $6. Yeah. So you want to use it carefully but it's beautiful. This is also over dyed. If you look very closely, you can see very subtle changes in the color, but it is just beautiful because it's purple and it's silk, and I cannot wait to try it out. And everybody talks about how awesome silk is. So we will see if I have that same kind of experience. So those are just some of the different, like the basic flosses that are out there. You have just the regular color fast, like DMC floss, straight one color. You have variegated, which it very definite changes of color, and then you have these over dyed flosses that are not. Some of them say they're color fast, but I don't think I would be washing them because they can definitely bleed. So they're beautiful, but they can definitely bleed. So those are just some of the flosses that are out there. And there are some others out there, but I just wanted to go over like the very basic ones that you would see. And so there you have it for the flosses. All right, looks like we're rolling. Okay, so I wanted to do this screen share because I wanted to show you some sites that you can go to that would probably be very helpful to you as far as like since you're either just starting to cross stitch or you're coming back to it after a long time. A lot of changes have happened. A lot of really cool changes have happened. So I'm going to show you 3 different sites that you can go to where it might help you in your journey starting out. Okay, so this first one is Fat Quarter Shop. And the reason I have up Fat Quarter Shop is as if you watch some of my FlossTube channels, then you're going to see that I have a lot of projects from Fat Quarter Shop because they've got some very cute projects. I have them up because they have very beginner friendly projects. And so I'm going to show you where you can find the cross stitch stuff on here. Now, they're mainly a quilting shop. That's how they started out. But they have incorporated cross stitch in, I'd say, the last like 5 years or so. So if you look at the menu up here at the top, I'm going to come over to cross stitch. And as soon as my cursor goes there, then you can see some of the different options that we have. Let me see if I can get it to cooperate and let me move myself over here and let's go back again. Okay, so they have like bestsellers, new arrivals, things that are on sale, cross stitch of the month, Kimberly's favorites, and so on and so forth. So we also have here Learn How to Cross Stitch because they did a series called Cross Stitch University. So let's go to that screen. Okay, so we have Cross Stitch University. Let me move myself up a little bit. There we go. And it says Beginner's Guide to Cross Stitch. So now they also had, a lot of times they'll have shirts and things to promote some cute stuff. But this is the Cross Stitch University pattern, and it is free. So you can download that and you're going to see that it's $0 for the free pattern. And then they have the starter bundle. And so this is going to have everything you need. It's going to have the fabric, the scissors, the pattern, of course, the floss, everything you need to do this cute little house right here. Now, if you already have some materials here, you already have the fabric or fabric you want to use, you already have floss and stuff, and you just had started collecting it, but you want to go through her series, you can download the pattern for free and still use the pattern. So then they have some other things that you can purchase. And I will tell you here, when you start seeing things like the line keeper and the cross stitch key and project bags, and all of that, they are fun. They make them cute. And these types of things will cause you to spend a lot of money in a very short amount of time. So you have to be careful when you start getting into the Chotsky stuff. if you're just starting to stitch, you're just learning how, and especially if you're not really sure that you're fully invested in this hobby, and I'm not trying to discourage you, but I would recommend, now remember, everything I tell you here, this is my opinion, okay? I would recommend that you forego all this little cutesy stuff. You don't absolutely have to have all these things to cross stitch. You don't even have to have a project bag to put the stuff in. A Ziploc bag will work. Okay. So I'm just telling you, I would make sure that this is something that I am ready to invest in. Once you start stitching, if you're like, oh man, I love this, then you can start looking at this other stuff and thinking, I would love to have some of these cute little needle minders. Needle minders are fancy magnets. You can buy just a little cheap magnet, it'll do the same thing. So there are a lot of little, things that you can buy that'll do exactly the same thing, but this is cutesy stuff. Okay. And I'm telling you this as someone who has bought a lot of cutesy stuff, but I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm buying cutesy stuff and spending more money on it than I actually have to. But I have a budget for my cross stitch, for one thing, and I'm fully invested in this hobby. So I kind of know certain things that I'm willing to buy, and there are certain things I'm not. And I love Lori Holt stuff, and you're going to find all kinds of Lori Holt stuff on here. And she has some beautiful stuff, and I love her whole idea, the whole aesthetic of being colorful and that kind of thing. But there are certain things, especially as I'm a teacher, like her little library cards. Yeah, you can buy them from her, but that was one thing I was like, I'm not spending that money on library cards when I can go to my school service shop, or I can go to Amazon and I can buy like 100 for some little cost, and you can get some pretty ones, or they don't have to be pretty. So there are lines I won't cross. I'm like, no, not doing it. But other things I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. So just getting your feet wet, you just kind of you might want to be careful, because just because it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, so they have the thread, and they've got the Ada and the Sweet Snip scissors, which are good scissors. QSnap, you don't have to have QSnap. You don't have to have a hoop unless you just want it. So these are just basic supplies that you can get. And they do have their Cross Stitch University series on the YouTube channel, which I will show you. But you can start here if you're just starting to stitch. You can also go to, like, they have notions, and that's what I call the Chotsky stuff, or the little notions. And as you can see, they have the quilting stuff here too, hoops and frames and bags and applique notions and adhesives and templates, and the list goes on and on. But for your cross stitch, see, here we go, needle minders. If I click on needle minders, internet's a little slow today. Okay, so this one needle minder, it's a $12 magnet. That's what it is. Okay, and it's cute. It is as cute as it can possibly be. But just you can scroll through here and just kind of see what they have, because they've got some beautiful stuff. But I just wanted to make you aware of Fat Quarter Shop, because they do have a lot of, like, if you go to their free cross stitch patterns, which is one thing I do, their customer service is fantastic, and they do offer a lot of free patterns. So you want to take advantage of the free patterns. And if you feel like, oh, I'm downloading a lot of patterns here and I'm not paying for them, and if you feel like you should donate something to them, they do Make-A-Wish in Texas, and they do a lot of things that help the community, which I like too. So you can always donate or make some kind of donation if you feel like you want or need to. And so they have a lot of free patterns. So they're very generous with giving out free patterns. And a lot of their patterns do go with charity things that they've got going on too, which is a really neat thing. Okay. So just wanted to make you aware of their website. So that's just fatquartershop.com. And so the next one I'm going to go to is one of the big ones here. This is 1-2-3 Stitch. You may hear a lot of people talk about going and buying things at 1-2-3 Stitch. So 1-2-3 Stitch has they deliver pretty quickly. Their items are packaged well, and you can get, especially if you're wanting to experiment with different types of fabrics, or if you want to try different needles, this is just a fantastic place to come to, because you can buy them fairly cheaply, more cheaply than you're going to buy them elsewhere. Fat Quarter Shop itself can get expensive. They do have quality stuff. I will tell you that it is quality stuff, but so does 1-2-3 Stitch. They have quality stuff, but they sell a lot of their items. Like, you can get smaller pieces of fabric for not a lot of money. And that way, if you try out a new fabric and then you're like, yeah, this is not going to work, you're not out a lot of money. Okay, so you're going to see, and they also do quilt stuff too. So you're going to see like cross stitch fabric, patterns, kids, all kinds of things. Like if I go to fabric, and then let me move myself over a little bit. There we go. Let me try that again. Okay, so if I click on fabric, then I can go by fabric type. I can go by count. So if I just want some, 28 count, we'll say Jobelin. So I can click on 28 count Jobelin, and it will take me to this whole list. You choose your size, and you can look at the colors. You can even click on certain colors that you like, and it'll show you like how many colors it has. So if we've got more neutrals and click on that, then here we have more neutral colors. And let's say I like this sapphire here. I can choose my size. And here we have, so this is, you can get like a 13 by 18 inch, which decent size, $7. Okay, that's not bad. And it tells you what is from Witchelt and tells you what it's made out of. And then you can do smaller, 9 by 13, and that's not quite $4. Okay, so not quite $4. So if you just want to try a little bit of something, that might be a really good thing for you to try. And so then I can click my back button, and then I can remove that. And if I want to see all the color options, I can click that. And we see they're fairly limited. Now you're thinking, well, why is that so limited? Why are all these out, marked out? Well, from what I heard, I don't think they're making Jobelin anymore, which to me is like, it's a shame. I love Jobelin, but they do still have some left. So this might be a time for me to buy up some Jobelin. It's just the material it's made out of. I love it. So you can do that. You can go to cross stitch patterns. You can choose by designer, ones that are on sale, new cross stitch patterns. So if I go to new patterns, a lot of these are probably from Market. So let's see. All right, I've lost my picture and I don't know where it went. And there we are. Took a little bit, didn't it? I was like, where am I? Okay. So then I can just scroll through some of these newer patterns. And, it's like, well, that picture's small. I can't see anything. So if you click on it, then it will give you a larger picture. And you can even click on it again and get a really good look at it. So this is a really good site just to, sometimes I like to go through and just do some exploring. And they have all kinds of like designers and collections and just all kinds of really, really neat stuff that you can just scroll through. And 1, 2, 3 is you can go down rabbit holes really fast. But if you've got some time and you just want to do some exploring, this is a really good one where you can just explore the world of cross stitch. Okay. All right. And then we do the last one. So that's 123stitch.com. And they also have a YouTube channel. Let's see. They usually have it pretty, I don't see, usually they have where you can just click on it. And I don't know if they have it somewhere. I'm just going to scroll a little bit here. And I don't know if usually they'll have it like on their homepage. But one other thing, like if you scroll down this far, and you're like, ooh, I want to see what's up there at the top. You can click top and it will, bam, take you right back to the top. So that's a really cool thing. Okay, but they do have a YouTube channel, and it is also 123stitch.com, which I will show you here shortly. So we're going to actually go over to the FlossTube tab. There's my picture again. It seems to want to disappear on me. Okay, now, this is another tool that may help you. When you discover the world of FlossTube, it opens up a whole new world for you. So FlossTube is our cross-stitch community within YouTube. And there are so many FlossTube channels. Anybody can make one. And a lot of people have. We get new FlossTubers all the time. In fact, I'm planning on making a video talking about, so you want to have a FlossTube channel. And I noticed that some others have done that too, and that's great. There is no way that you're going to be able to watch every single FlossTuber out there. Nobody has that kind of time. I don't care if you live to be 150. So just explore, and you don't have to watch FlossTube at all. Some people don't like FlossTube. They don't, because some FlossTubers have kind of gotten caught up into name dropping or seeing how many views they can get and how many subscribers they can get and try to make their channel as big as possible. Or, they just get caught up and kind of get a big head about it. And, I want to remind them, like, look, outside of floss world, nobody knows you. Nobody knows who you are. So, I do this because it's fun, and I hope that I'm inspiring and helping people. And that's what everybody's attitude should be, is, just showing their stuff and hoping that they can help other people enjoy this hobby too. So with all the floss tubers out there, if you start watching one and then you think, I don't know, this thing annoys me and I don't, I'm not really getting into it, unsubscribe. If you subscribe, unsubscribe, go to someone else, because there are so many different types out there. It's like, I try to have, look at floss tubers who are different than I am. Maybe they stitch projects that are different from mine, because I just want to see different stuff. I also try to find some people who are similar to me, some people who are very different from me, because I want to see the whole world of cross stitch out there. That's just me. Some people want to just watch FlossTube channels who of people who do the same types of projects they are. If they really are really focused on samplers, they only want to watch people who do samplers, that kind of thing. That's fine. It's all good. It's all fine. So I just wanted to show you how you can find some different FlossTube channels if this is something you'd like to do. So what I did in the search bar was I put FlossTube cross stitch channels. Okay. And so now you're going to see some, and this is of course the name of their channel, and this is Whips and Kits, and then you'll see Colorado Cross Stitcher, and some of these they come up immediately, and I honestly don't know how the YouTube algorithm works. I really don't. But you're going to see some who come up where certain videos have a lot of views, or maybe they have a lot of subscribers and they just come up first. I typically am not one who comes up first, although some people say they saw me on their feed or on their recommended. So maybe there are certain ones of my videos that will pop up. I'm not really as concerned about that. I mean, I want people to, find my channel to be inspired and stuff, but you'll see a lot of the more what I would call popular channels that come up. And of course, Fat Quarter Shop, a lot of the designers have their own channels too. So I try to subscribe to a lot of designer channels because I like to get their perspective on this industry. And so there's Fat Quarter Shop, and you can see the red lines. So you've seen that I've watched her. And so, I mean, there's some like this Periwinkle Stitcher, I have not heard of this one. There are just so many channels out there. It's not to say that this is not a good channel. I haven't watched it. But just, I mean, tons. There's a 123stitch.com video. I've already seen that one. And it just goes on and on. Caterpillar Cross Stitch. That's another good one. She's out of the UK. And she's got other people who do videos for her as well. So just a bunch. Okay. So I'm going to scroll back up, and you can also, there are certain things you might look for, and that's maybe how you found this one. So if I put like, full coverage, there we go, cross stitch, because I've looked before. So if I do that, I can start scrolling and I find videos dealing with full coverage. And so, I can just kind of scroll on through here. Teresa Little Stitcher's gotten very big, and, and you're going to find all kinds of things. Now, one of my videos had popped up here because I've got a full coverage video, or how to do full coverage, tips on how to do that. And it's gotten quite a few views because people are curious about that. So, you can watch some of these different ones, and some are better than others, of course, and you just get some ideas that way. So, that's if you're searching for a particular thing that you like, a particular stitch that you need to learn, you can, we can type that in. So there are all those, and then like, how to do a half stitch. So if I want to know how to do a half stitch, then there you go. Got all these videos on how to do a half stitch. Okay. And there you go. So there's that. All right. Now I'm going to show you, let's see, Fat Quarter Shop. Oop. You want to do, there's cross stitch. Okay. So here's the channel. So if I click on the channel, it says I'm subscribed. Yeah. Yes, I am. Okay. So there's the channel. And if we look under playlists, maybe. Okay. And there they have their FlossTube live tutorials. And here is Cross Stitch University, and this is the full playlist. So if you buy that pattern and you want to learn how to stitch, then you've got, there you go, Cross Stitch University, so you can use theirs. And I will say, I agree with most of what Kimberly says. There are some things that she'll say, and I'm like, no. And I'm sure, some people do it with me. They might listen to what I'm saying. They'll go, no. So that's why you want to listen to a lot of people. And then you have to decide, okay, 1, 2, 3, stitch, cross stitch, shop. Okay, and so there's 1, 2, 3, stitch. Okay, I've not looked on their playlist, so I don't know. Okay, so they have the stitch along and crafting and all that stuff. So the lady here, I believe she is the one who actually owns the business. And as you can see, I haven't watched this one yet, so I am excited to see that one. But they have some really, really good tutorials on here. They've done an excellent job with that. Okay, now I think that was the last one. So I will show you. I'm going to show you mine. Just show you my playlist. So if you haven't seen it, there I am. Almost there I am. I'm not very photogenic, but that's a pretty good picture. Okay, so we can see, and if you're not really familiar with all the floss tubes, of course, I've got, right now I've got 1,600 subscribers. Okay, I'm a baby channel. My channel is not that big, and it's slow growing. It's been slow and steady growth, which is great. I am not focused on how many subscribers I have. So I'm just happy that you all are here and wanting to learn stuff and wanting to be inspired, and I hope that I do that for you. Okay, so there's my beautiful Michael Jackson cross stitch. That's a full coverage piece too. So you'll see my videos down here, and they have a lot of the red lines because I want to go back and play them through just to make sure and that I didn't miss anything, and then I can delete the video if I need to. Okay, so my playlists. Just so you're aware, especially if you're new to this channel, just so you're aware, I have the classroom gyms. A lot of those you see that's private. You can see it on here because this is my channel and my account. But I have that private because those were videos. I just named it classroom gyms. Those were videos that I would show my students. And I wanted to save certain ones that I knew I would forget about. So you're not going to be interested in, map skills, I don't think. So, none of those videos in the classroom gyms are ones that I made anyway. So I do have my these FlossTube videos are regular videos that I have made where I'm just showing you my stuff and I'm showing you my whips and my stash and all that stuff. And then what this one will go under are the tutorials. And in the tutorials, so if we look at the playlist, then what you see first is you're going to see the basics of cross stitch. And I have a little series on how to cross stitch. And so it starts with the supplies that you need, and I show how to do all of these different stitches and then how to follow a cross stitch pattern. So I took a little cupcake pattern and went all the way through. So if you are just learning how to cross stitch and you just want to see what I'm doing here, then you can come to the tutorials and you can see how I cross stitch a pattern, and I go through the entire pattern too. Go about 30, 35 minutes or so at a time. We look at the whole pattern. Okay. And so then we get into, okay, so there tips how to stitch a full coverage piece. That one, for some reason, I guess people are really curious about full coverage. That one's gotten 7,000 views. I was like, what? 7,000? Wow. That, and then the stitching with variegated and over dyed floss, and that kind of thing. So if you're curious about the tutorials, you can check those out. And then I think that's it for that. Scoot back up for the playlist. Tutorials and the FlossTube videos are the ones you'll see. And I made a few shorts, but that was for last year. I don't think I'll do any more shorts. I didn't like that. It's such a limited time period that you have. And I felt like I was having to just rush to get through it. And I like to talk on these things. So not a good idea. So I think those 3 shorts will be all the shorts I have. All right, so I think that is all I wanted to show you on here, but I wanted to do this segment just to let you know at least a couple of places that are out there that can help you. And there are all kinds of sites that have free cross stitch patterns. A lot of designers have free cross stitch patterns. So as you learn about designers, I mean, you can go to 123 Stitch and look up the list of designers, and a lot of them have websites and they have freebies. So if you're on a limited budget, I would definitely check out 123 Stitch to get cheaper supplies that are quality supplies, and also check out freebies that designers other places have. Okay. All right. So I think that's it for this segment, at least. So, all right, we're done with this part. Well, here we are. That's the end of it. I hope that you were able to get out of this what you wanted to get out of it. If you have questions, please put some questions into the comments section. I will be more than happy to answer. I try to reply to every comment that I get. If you are a seasoned stitcher and you've hung in there with me and used this as one of your little background videos, if there was something that you feel like maybe I need to address in more detail, if you think there's a tutorial idea in there, please let me know and say, hey, I really think that the beginners could use a detailed tutorial on this, like a step-by-step. Even if it's something really simple, like, could you actually do a floss toss? Could you actually talk about different colors of fabric, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be anything complicated, and the tutorials don't have to be something where it goes on for a long time. But if you feel like, yeah, you probably need to hit that a little bit harder and a little bit more detail, or if you're a beginner stitcher and you've watched this and you're like, man, I really could use a little more time with that particular thing, please let me know. I will be more than happy to jot down ideas and come up with more tutorials. Teaching's what I do for a living. And so I'm happy to be able to have that crossover into the craft that I love so much. So I hope that you were inspired. I hope that you learned a lot and that you feel better and more confident about cross stitch and entering this world with us. And I hope that you have enjoyed being on this little journey with me today and visiting with me in the craft room. I always enjoy having you all in the craft room with me. So be creative, be blessed, and I will see you later. Bye.